My son laughed. You'd be nothing without me. I stayed silent. And canceled his credit card. I was living in a modest duplex in Cedar Falls, Iowa. A narrow strip of yard out front, where squirrels ran bold across the fence and the neighbor's cat thought it owned the sidewalk. My days were quiet, filled with small routines, a short morning shift at the clinic cleaning exam rooms, followed by a walk home with my tote bag full of marked-down produce. In the evenings, I wiped tables and refilled ketchup bottles at the diner 2 blocks down, where they still played songs from the 70s on the jukebox. It wasn't a glamorous life, but it was mine. Familiar. Predictable. My son Kevin lived in Seattle now. Tall buildings, rooftop bars, wine that came in boxes shaped like cubes. He had made it big, as they say, working in tech. I didn't know what he did exactly, something with algorithms and scalability, he'd once explained, but I knew it paid well. Married to Jessica, polished and sharp, with teeth too white and a way of speaking that made everything sound like a performance. Kevin called every now and then. Short calls. Just enough to check a box. He told people he supported me. Said it proudly at company parties, I imagine. $6,000 a month, deposited faithfully, like clockwork. His generosity, he called it. That's what the neighbors must have heard too. I didn't correct them. There's no polite way to explain that sometimes pride isn't worth the explaining. That Thanksgiving, they invited me out west. Said they wanted me to see their new place. A penthouse, all glass and chrome and cold echoing rooms. Jessica greeted me with a cheek kiss that barely brushed skin. Kevin pulled me into a hug, too loud and too quick. Hope you're enjoying all that money, Mom, he said, grinning. I smiled. Reflex. But something quiet shifted in me then, not a break, not yet. Just a fold. A crease, like a napkin turned the wrong way at the edge of an elegant table. Jessica had prepared a spread so pristine it looked like a magazine ad. But everything tasted faintly of citrus and salt, even the bread. I sat at the long table, my place set with a gold-rimmed plate and a linen napkin folded like a crane. Kevin sat at the head. Jessica beside him. Across from me, 2 colleagues from his office, and a woman named Dana who ran some nonprofit. No one asked me where I'd traveled from. No one asked if I liked the soup. Kevin poured a Pinot Noir into my glass, said, "We wanted this to be special, Mom. A chance for you to see the life you helped build." I nodded. Smiled. Took a polite sip. No one noticed I left it mostly untouched. Conversation swirled. People laughed about things I didn't recognize, apps, board appointments, trips to Lisbon. Jessica glanced down the table occasionally, smiling with her teeth. Once, she touched Kevin's arm and said something about me, quietly. He didn't answer. Just nodded and cut his meat. After dinner, the others moved into the living room. Sleek leather furniture, glass coffee tables, a fireplace that lit with a remote. I helped Jessica clear the dishes. She handed me a dish towel without looking at me. Her bracelets clinked as she loaded the dishwasher. "You've done so much for Kevin," she said, almost absently. "It's good that you're finally getting to enjoy the results." I folded the towel in half. I was always proud of him. Never needed anything in return. She paused, her hand resting on the faucet. "Yes. Well. We'll make sure you're comfortable. Long term." Her tone flattened that word, comfortable, into something clinical. Something fixed. My stomach tightened. Later, Kevin brought out a laptop. Sat me down at the kitchen island. His smile was practiced, his voice easy. "We've been talking about future planning," he said. "You know, making sure everything's set up. Medical, financial. That kind of thing." He opened a document. Power of attorney. Durable access. "It just simplifies everything," he said. "That way, if something happens, we're not scrambling." Jessica leaned on the counter, arms folded. "It's the smart thing." The cursor blinked beside the digital signature line. My name was already typed in. I looked at Kevin. His face open, expectant. Too calm. Too rehearsed. I closed the laptop. I'll think about it, I said, my voice steady. I'd like to read it slowly. On my own. He blinked, surprised. Then recovered. Sure, of course. No rush. But his hand stayed still. The pen remained beside the laptop. Jessica didn't smile. That night, they showed me to the guest room, a narrow, airless space near the laundry. The walls were bare. No photos, no clock. A single chair in the corner. On the nightstand was a bottle of water and a tiny card that said welcome. I lay awake a long time. The sheets were soft, the pillows firm. But something in me felt stiff. Cold. At midnight, I rose and stood by the window. The city lights blinked in silence. I thought about Cedar Falls. The chipped mug by the sink. My back porch. The steady hum of the train 2 streets over. None of that followed me here. Not even my name, just Mom, a title they used like a password. Convenient. Removable. I realized then what Jessica had meant. Not welcome. Accommodated. In the morning, Kevin had already left for the office. Jessica sat across from me at the kitchen table, nursing a smoothie the color of damp moss. She scrolled on her phone, pausing only to say, "There's almond milk in the fridge if you want cereal. We don't really keep bread." I thanked her, though I wasn't hungry. The morning sun came through the high windows in clean, sterile stripes. Everything about the place was engineered for appearance: curated bookshelves, untouched throw pillows, a fruit bowl with polished green apples that, somehow, never aged. Jessica's voice broke the silence again. "We're having a few friends over tonight." Casual thing. I waited for her to finish, to offer an invitation. But she didn't. Instead, she added, "You'll probably want to rest anyway. Long travel and all." I nodded. That afternoon, I walked the neighborhood. It smelled of cedar mulch and new paint. Every lawn looked trimmed by a laser. No children played outside. No laundry flapped on lines. Just silence, the kind that hums behind tinted windows and Ring cameras. When I returned, Jessica was arranging hors d'oeuvres on a marble slab. I passed quietly through the kitchen, but she called after me. "Would you mind staying in the guest room tonight? Just while people are over." I turned. "Of course." She smiled faintly, already forgetting me. In the room, I closed the door and sat on the edge of the bed. The hum of voices grew through the walls, faint and distant. I reached for my suitcase and opened it. Inside, my cardigan lay folded at the top. The one Kevin had given me for Christmas years ago, back when gifts came wrapped with handwritten notes. I unfolded it slowly. Still smelled faintly of lavender dryer sheets. Beneath it, I found the envelope I always traveled with, my insurance forms, my will, a copy of my bank statement. I had brought it without thinking. Habit. Precaution. I stared at the numbers. The monthly deposit from Kevin was still there. Automatic. Unchanged. But I noticed something new. A series of withdrawals labeled property management. Advisory fee. Account consolidation. Small amounts. Recurring. Always authorized by the secondary user. I opened my banking app. Jessica's name. Linked permissions. Full access. I stared at the screen. My fingers moved slowly, tapping through layers of settings, statements, linked accounts. One button let me remove her access. I hovered. Then stopped. I wasn't ready, not yet. Not here, in their house. In this white-walled room with its thin carpet and air that smelled faintly of lemon and control. That evening, I listened to them laugh in the other room. Toasting. Talking. Jessica's voice bright, performative. Kevin's deeper, polished with pride. At one point, I heard someone ask about his mother. She's resting, Jessica said smoothly. She's not used to this kind of pace. A pause. Still adjusting. Adjusting. As though I were the one out of place. A misfit thread in their perfect linen tablecloth. I didn't eat dinner that night. I sat in silence, wrapped in my cardigan, and stared at the small white lamp on the bedside table. Eventually, I rose. Went to the closet. Took out my suitcase. Slowly, I began to repack. Folded the few clothes I'd brought. Slipped the envelope back between the layers. I left the cardigan on the bed. In the morning, I would leave too. Quietly. Without a word. I would not ask for a ride. I would not leave a note. Some departures don't require announcements. Only a door, and the strength to close it. The plane touched down in Iowa under a quilted sky, the kind of gray that makes the pavement look wet even when it's dry. I took the bus from the airport. A slow, lumbering thing that smelled of old vinyl and carried 3 passengers, all of us swaying gently as we passed leafless trees and half-closed gas stations. At home, the porch light was still on, a small mercy. I had left it that way without knowing I would return so soon. My key turned stiffly in the lock, like it, too, had grown unused to my absence. The house was cold. I didn't bother with the thermostat. I set the suitcase by the door, walked into the kitchen, and boiled water. It was quiet in the way small places are, not empty, but folded inward. My mug still sat by the sink, upside down on the drying rack. The toaster blinked 12 o'clock. A sign, I suppose, that time had passed differently here. I stood by the window and watched the street. Nothing moved except the wind. Somewhere behind me, the kettle clicked off. I made tea. Saturday. And let the weight of their silence settle into the room beside me. For 2 days, Kevin didn't call. No text. No voicemail. Just nothing. As though my leaving was expected. Or worse, unnoticed. On the 3rd day, I received an email. Brief. Sterile. Hope you made it back safely. We'll talk soon about next steps. No love. No apology. No question about why I left. Just logistics. A transaction postponed. I didn't answer. Instead, I took out the envelope from my suitcase. Spread its contents across the kitchen table, insurance forms, banking passwords, notes from my attorney in town. I read slowly, underlining here and there with the old blue pen I kept in the drawer with the coupons. I called the bank the next morning. Asked to update permissions. The voice on the other end was polite, unsure. You want to remove your son's access? Yes, I said. They asked for a reason. I gave none. By the end of the day, the accounts were mine again. Clean. Quiet. That evening, I walked to the diner for my shift. The manager looked surprised to see me. I smiled and said I was back early, that the city wasn't for me. He nodded. Didn't press. I tied on my apron and moved through the familiar motions, refilling salt shakers, checking creamers, wiping down booths. No one asked about my trip. At the end of the night, I sat at the corner booth with a cup of decaf and counted tips. $24. Enough for groceries. Enough for something warm. It was snowing lightly when I walked home. The street lamp at the corner flickered. I paused under it, looked up into the falling light. This is what it feels like, I thought. Not escape. Not even anger. Just the quiet reclaiming of space. In the morning, I made a list. Nothing dramatic. Just the things I needed: eggs, laundry soap, a new bulb for the hallway. Underneath it, I added one more line, softer, tentative. Call Marlene. The woman from church who'd asked if I wanted to join her book club. I had said no at the time. Said I was too busy. That was before I realized how often I said no to things I wanted, just to make space for people who never noticed. The phone rang once that afternoon. Kevin. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I listened. Hi Mom. Just wanted to check in. You left pretty fast. Jess said maybe we overwhelmed you. Let me know when you want to talk. About the paperwork. Or anything. He paused. Hope you're okay. That was all. I deleted the message. Then turned off the phone. Not forever. Just for now. Because not every silence is an absence. Some are space. To think. To heal. To begin again, on your own terms. By the end of the week, the kitchen had settled back into its quiet rhythms. My house had always been like that, still, orderly, a kind of modest refuge where even the radiator hissed politely. I wiped the counters more than they needed, ran the vacuum over clean rugs, rearranged the pantry in ways only I would notice. On Sunday, I opened the side drawer by the fridge. Inside was a thin, soft-covered notebook. Nothing fancy. I had picked it up at the pharmacy last year for jotting down recipes I never ended up making. The first few pages were blank, then a list of soups, lentil, potato leek, split pea, each with careful notes in the margins. I turned the page and began to write. Not recipes this time. Just sentences. Phrases I didn't want to forget. Things I had never said out loud. He called it generosity, but it came with a leash. I used to fold his socks into neat little balls, now he folds me into explanations. The money wasn't a gift. It was a receipt. The words came slow at first. But steady. I wrote for nearly an hour, the kettle clicking off behind me, the daylight stretching quietly across the floor. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was cataloging. Not just what had happened, but who I had been while it happened. Because there was something worse than betrayal. And that was erasure. I had let it happen gradually, with every small yes, every moment I told myself not to take it personally. With every email I didn't question. Every signature I signed under the guise of simplifying things. That phrase again, simplify. It had always come up when Jessica spoke. As though my presence were a complication. Something to be reduced. Flattened. I stood at the window and watched the snow melt slowly along the sidewalk, revealing the uneven cracks beneath. The earth reclaiming itself. That afternoon, I took the notebook to the library. The clerk at the front desk, a woman in her 50s with a streak of silver in her braid, remembered me. Haven't seen you in a while, she said warmly. Back from your trip? I nodded. Just visiting. Didn't stay long. She didn't ask why. Just smiled and handed me the latest issue of the Reader's Circle newsletter. Book club's restarting, she said. If you're ever interested. I took it. Folded it carefully. Said, maybe. Back at home, I placed the newsletter under a magnet on the fridge. Then I opened the drawer where I kept bills and tucked the notebook beside them. A quiet archive of a life not yet erased. That evening, I received another message from Kevin. Longer this time. Hi Mom. I'm sorry if we made you feel pushed. Jess says maybe we came on too strong with the paperwork. I didn't mean for you to feel like we were forcing anything. Just trying to be responsible. You know, long-term planning. I hope you understand. Let's talk soon. I read it twice. There was no question in it. No curiosity. Just damage control. I didn't reply. Instead, I went to the closet and pulled down the metal box that had sat unopened since my husband passed, the one with our old joint documents, titles, retirement plans. I sat on the carpet and opened it. Inside were folders. Neatly labeled. Insurance, pension, property. I pulled them out slowly, lining them across the floor. One by one, I read through them. Some were out of date. Some needed updating. But they were mine. I reached for my notebook again. Added a new page. To do, meet with Joan at the credit union. Transfer titles. Confirm beneficiaries. Cancel secondary access. It was not a revenge list. It was an inventory. Not of things lost, but of what still belonged to me. My name. My signature. My choices. That night, I fell asleep without the radio on, the first time in months. No noise. No distraction. Just the sound of snow melting outside, and the quiet surety that I was still here. And I was not done. It was nearly 2 weeks later when Kevin showed up unannounced. I saw the car first, sleek, black, leased. It pulled into my narrow driveway like it didn't quite belong there, its tires crunching over the uneven gravel. I was kneeling in the garden, clearing out last season's dead mint, when the door opened and he stepped out. Dressed in a windbreaker and jeans that looked too new, he stood there a moment like he wasn't sure what to do with his hands. "Hey, Mom," he said. I straightened slowly, brushing soil from my knees. The cold had left the ground brittle. It cracked softly under my shoes as I stood. "I thought I'd check in. Haven't heard from you." I nodded, said nothing. Then gestured toward the porch. Inside, I filled the kettle again, the same one that had hissed alone after I returned from Seattle. Kevin sat at the kitchen table. His elbows rested lightly on the surface. I noticed he looked older than I remembered. Tired in the face. Or maybe just unfamiliar. The silence stretched, thick and even. Finally, he said, "You left so suddenly." "Jess and we didn't mean to upset you." I didn't answer right away. Just placed a mug in front of him, set a second one across the table. "We were trying to be proactive," he continued. "Just thinking long term, you know? It's not easy planning for the future." "No," I said. "It isn't." He looked up. My voice had come out more measured than I expected. He shifted. "Mom, if this is about the paperwork." "It's not just that." His brow furrowed slightly. "Then what?" I reached for the notebook, still on the counter where I left it, and opened it. I didn't show it to him. Just looked down at the list I'd made the night I unpacked. "Kevin," I said quietly, "when did I become a liability to you?" He blinked. "You're not. I paid for your first car. Your graduate tuition. Your wedding. You called it support. I called it love." He exhaled through his nose, glanced toward the window. "You said I'd always have a room," I continued. "But what I had was access. Until it wasn't useful." "That's not fair." I raised a hand gently. "You asked a question. Let me finish." He closed his mouth. "I don't need your monthly deposits." I never did. I let them continue because it was easier than telling you I didn't want to be seen as an expense with a receipt. He leaned back in the chair, arms folded now. Less defensive than wounded, but the difference didn't matter much. "I'm not here to shame you," I said. "I just want you to know I see it now. The slow vanishing. The way I became background noise in your new life." He looked away. Then back again. "I didn't know you felt that way." "That's the point," I said. "You never asked." The kettle clicked off. I poured the water. Neither of us reached for the mugs. Eventually, he said, "What happens now?" I looked at him for a long moment. "You go home. You live your life. I'll live mine. I'll call when I want to talk. Not to be managed. Not to be filed under obligations." He nodded. Once. Then again. But it didn't reach his eyes. "I just thought we were doing the right thing," he said. "Maybe you were," I said. "But not for me." He stood to leave. I didn't follow him out. The door clicked shut quietly behind him. I stood there alone in my kitchen, the tea growing cold beside me, and looked down at the visitor's seat. Then I pulled the mug toward my side of the table. And drank it slowly. Alone. But not diminished. Weeks passed. The snow began to pull back from the curbs, revealing the dull earth beneath. My neighborhood stirred slowly. Children's bicycles reappeared on porches. Mailboxes stopped groaning from the cold. I returned to my routines, not because they brought joy, but because they steadied me. The Tuesday shift at the diner. The morning walk to the library. The small nods exchanged with people who didn't ask too many questions. One afternoon, while dusting the mantel, I paused before a framed photo, Kevin at 6, missing his front teeth, gripping a plastic trophy with one hand and my wrist with the other. I stared at it for a long while, then placed it face down. Not in anger. Just a quiet kind of release. Later that day, I pulled out the 3 large boxes I had stored in the hall closet. One was labeled Kevin's school papers, another, summer camp, and the third, cards and keepsakes. They smelled faintly of cedar and thyme. I sat cross-legged on the carpet and sorted slowly. Construction paper crafts. Father's Day cards he had made for my late husband. A macaroni necklace missing half its pieces. I placed some back in the box. Others I tucked into a smaller container I kept for memory, not sentiment. There's a difference. At the bottom of the last box, folded in 4, was a letter Kevin had written me during his sophomore year of college. The ink was faded, the paper creased and soft at the edges. Mom. Thanks for sending the grocery money. I know things are tight. I promise I'll make it count. I miss home sometimes. Even your bad coffee. You're the only person who never makes me feel like I'm failing. Love. Kevin. I didn't cry. I placed the letter in the notebook, between the pages of my list. A footnote. A reminder that people change. That sons can forget how they once felt, or choose not to remember. That night, I brought the photo frame from the mantel into the basement. I didn't throw it away. I didn't smash it. I wrapped it in newspaper and tucked it into a box marked stored. Because some things, when they lose their warmth, don't need to be erased. Only dimmed. In early March, I got a letter from Jessica. Not a call. Not a text. A typed letter, printed on cream stationery. The kind you use for thank you notes when you're pretending sincerity. It was brief. Sylvia. We were hoping you might reconsider the estate documents. Kevin and I have been speaking with a planner, and your involvement would make things significantly smoother in the long run. We'd be happy to cover any legal fees. Let us know. Warmly. Jessica. There was a return envelope inside. I tore it into 4 clean pieces and placed them in the recycling bin. Then I made soup. Not because I was sad. But because it was cold. And because I still liked the way thyme smelled in steam. Later, I sat with my notebook again. I added another entry to the list. They're not listening. They're circling. Waiting for my silence to soften again. I circled that line in pencil. Then underlined it in ink. There would be no softening. There would only be quiet. And space. And me, folding each day carefully, like clean laundry, not perfect, not pressed, but mine. Spring came quietly to Cedar Falls. No grand blooms, just slow green creeping into the trees and the smell of damp earth clinging to the wind. I began leaving the windows open during the day. The breeze rustled the curtains like a memory trying to get my attention. I changed the bedding. Washed the winter coats. Rearranged the kitchen drawers, not out of need, but rhythm. That's what I had now. Rhythm. Kevin didn't call again. Jessica didn't write. I half expected another letter, something colder, something couched in legal courtesy. But nothing came. No envelopes, no softening apologies, no invitations. Instead, I received a voicemail from someone I hadn't heard from in years. Aunt Sylvia, it's me. It's Diane. I don't know if you still have this number, but I heard through one of the old church ladies that you're back in town. I'd love to visit. No pressure. Just thought I'd try. Diane. My sister's child. Raised 3 counties away, now a grown woman with children of her own. I remembered her freckles. The way she used to sneak mints from my purse. I didn't call her back that day. Instead, I opened the notebook again. Someone is still reaching, I wrote. Not because of what I have. Not because of what I can give. Just because. I underlined the word twice. That Sunday, I went to the early service at St. Luke's. Sat in the back pew. The same one where I used to sit with Kevin in pressed shirts and clip-on ties. A few familiar faces nodded at me. No one asked where I'd been. Afterward, I saw Diane at the coffee table, pouring herself a lukewarm cup. She turned, startled when she saw me. Her face softened. Aunt Sylvia, she said. I nodded. We didn't hug. Just sat at a small round table with paper cups and powdered creamer. I didn't want to intrude, she said. I just thought. I don't know. I missed you. I smiled gently. That's enough. We talked about her children. Her job at the hardware store. How she still missed her mother. Then she paused, hesitating. I heard about what happened. With Kevin. I said nothing. Diane looked down at her cup. People forget mothers are people. They get so busy measuring what you give, they stop seeing you. I nodded again. Quietly. When I got home, I placed a new folder beside the notebook. Labeled it letters. Inside, I slipped a single page, a list of people I wanted to write before the end of spring. Not dramatic letters. Not emotional ones. Just words. Steady. Honest. Final. One of those names was Kevin's. Not to mend. Not to reopen. Just to speak, one last time, without being managed. That week, I cleaned out the attic. Gave away the old luggage set. Donated Kevin's baby clothes. Kept the sweater with the duck pattern. Some things belonged to silence, but not to disposal. I left the house only to walk to the library and the market. Every day, I passed my own mailbox. I stopped checking it. I didn't want news from him. Not through lawyers. Not through middlemen. I wasn't waiting. The silence was not a punishment. It was a reclamation. One afternoon, I unplugged the phone. Not because I was angry, because I wanted stillness to reach all the way through. The phone sat on the hook, quiet and dumb. A relic. Like so many promises. I made soup again that night. Tomato and barley. There was no music, no radio, no flickering television. Just the sound of my own breath. Even that, now, belonged to me. By April, the forsythia had bloomed in scraggly yellow bunches along the alley fences. I watched them from the porch some mornings, wrapped in my shawl, sipping tea from the chipped mug Kevin once gave me with "Best Mom" written in a font meant to look like a child's handwriting. I never liked the mug. But I kept it, the way we keep things that once seemed sincere. The letter to Kevin took time. I didn't want to write out of spite. I didn't want to list grievances or build a ledger of disappointments. That was their language, transactional, strategic. I wanted mine to be something else. It began simply. Kevin. You were born in early winter. The first time I held you, you blinked so slowly, it felt like you were still deciding whether to stay. I paused there, pen still. Then continued. There were years when I measured my worth in how steady I kept the world around you. In how few things you ever had to ask twice for. I did not expect repayment. Only recognition. I set the pen down. That was enough for the first day. Each evening, I returned to the page. Carefully. Deliberately. You grew tall. Grew busy. Your voice deepened and your eyes grew distant. That happens with sons. I didn't resent it. I only feared becoming furniture, something you pass without seeing. Another day passed. Then came the paperwork. The requests under the name of responsibility. The steady replacement of trust with access. I didn't call it betrayal. I didn't say his name again. Instead, I ended it with a single line. I am no longer waiting to be understood. That is my gift to you. I folded the letter. Slipped it into an envelope. But I didn't seal it. Didn't address it. Instead, I placed it in the notebook, not to send, but to finish something privately. A full sentence. A closed thought. That weekend, Diane came by again. With a tin of lemon cookies and her youngest in tow, a boy of 7 with grass-stained knees and a pebble in each pocket. He sat on the rug playing with the coasters while Diane and I drank weak coffee in the living room. He asked if you were my grandmother, she said, laughing softly. Said you smell like the library. I didn't mind. Later, when they left, I walked them to the porch. The sky was clean, the wind sharper than it looked. Diane paused at the bottom step. You doing okay? I'm not lonely, I said. Just quiet. She nodded. Didn't ask more. After they left, I stood there a while, looking at the road. Not watching. Not waiting. Just present. That evening, I made a fire in the small pit out back. Burned a handful of old receipts. A tax file from 15 years ago. A folder marked retirement planning, shared. When the flames settled, I added the envelope. The one for Kevin. It curled slowly, shrinking in on itself until it collapsed into ash. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still. The silence afterward was different than the one before. Less hollow. More chosen. In the morning, I poured the ashes into the garden. Near the mint. It would come back, eventually. It always did. It's late now. The window is open, and the wind is shifting the curtain just slightly. It smells like rain, the kind that hasn't started yet. The kind that keeps the world still, like it's listening. I made tea an hour ago and forgot about it. It's cold now. I don't mind. The notebook is nearly full. One more page left. I've written everything I needed to. Not all at once, and not always clearly, but honestly. That was the rule I gave myself. Be honest. Not angry. Not noble. Just true. I've stopped using the word family in the way I once did. Not out of bitterness. Just accuracy. What I had with Kevin, what we had, is over. It ended somewhere between the careful wording of a power of attorney and a folded napkin in a kitchen too white, too clean, too planned. But this is not a story about loss. It's a story about choosing not to remain lost. Kevin hasn't called in months now. He might be waiting for a holiday. Or for guilt to feel like obligation. Or maybe he's just moved on, the way some people do when they no longer have access. He doesn't know I burned the letter. Doesn't know I closed the accounts. Doesn't know that I've started taking small trips on weekends, nothing extravagant. A bus ride to Decorah to see the lilacs. A motel in Mason City where I sat alone and watched the river until the sun slipped behind it. I started writing again, not in the notebook. In my mind. Little lines. Descriptions. Sometimes I whisper them out loud while folding laundry or sweeping the porch. Not to be heard. Just to remind myself I still have a voice. The notebook stays on the kitchen table now. Diane's daughter calls it the book with Grandma's face, because she once saw me tracing the wrinkles on the cover absent-mindedly. That makes me laugh. I don't look at the photo on the mantel anymore. Not because it hurts. Because I've replaced it. A new frame, a new picture, Diane and her boys, sitting on my porch, the middle one with a popsicle stain on his shirt. It's not perfect. It's real. And I think that's what I needed all along. Not approval. Not performance. Just presence. The church ladies asked me last week if I'd like to lead the reading group this summer. I said yes without hesitation. First time I've said yes like that in years. It felt like dropping a stone into water, clean and certain. There's a mirror in the hallway that I used to avoid. Too much honesty in it. But now, I pass it and nod. Just a nod. A recognition. I am still here. Still choosing. The rain has started now. Soft at first. Then steady. I think I'll sleep well tonight. I've earned that much. Tomorrow I'll do the usual: coffee, walk, library. Maybe I'll bake something. Something simple. The kind you eat warm, alone, without offering it up for approval. And if the phone rings, I may answer. Or I may not. Because the most radical thing I ever did wasn't leaving. It was staying. Staying in myself. Quietly. Fully. This is the last page. I will not fill it with grief. Only space. The space to begin again.